right, thanks for joining us today, and we are going to sound off about crystals. So today is Crystals Explained. All right, so crystals have been around for millennium. Kings used to use crystals on their breastplates, different color crystals. They were said to have properties, magical properties. Even going back to Lemuria, Atlantis, those are supposedly crystal civilizations going all the way back there. So they've been around for a long, long time. And they've been around because people noticed that they did things. Now, back in the day, it seems like it was sort of a more metaphysical thing, what they used them for. But if we link it with today, it's really not that much more metaphysical. Just take, for example, even in the 1700s, they would use a piece of quartz crystal. They called it a sextant, and that would hold up to the sun, and that would let them know what directions that they were going in. So I thought that that was real interesting. So not only do they have metaphysical properties, but they also have properties that we can use here on Earth as far as tangible things and tools and different instruments and stuff that we can use them for. So I thought that that was real, real interesting. So how do they work? Crystals have something called a crystal lattice structure. And this structure, it means that it's a perfect shape in all dimensions. So there's a certain kind of shape, a certain kind of diagram that the crystal is going to. And because it's even and perfectly proportioned, it gives off high vibrations. Now, if you watch any of my other videos, when we talk about vibrations, it's that when two different vibrations come in contact with each other, they have to sync up. So that means either the lower vibration can't go to the higher vibration and you have to separate, or most likely what they do is they kind of merge. So a lot of times the higher vibrating thing, which would be the crystal, would bring the lower vibration thing, which is us, up a little bit more vibrations, even if its vibration goes down, but it has to meet that equilibrium. So that's basically what crystals do. So just by having them around you, they can actually affect your vibration. They can affect your aura. Now they're found underground, a lot of places, especially Brazil. So a lot of quartz crystals in Brazil, and people start finding them. And I guess they just picked it up one day and say, "Hey, here's a shiny rock." But remember, it's already going back to Lemuria. So this is when people kind of rediscover it. We have a reset every few years. So people kind of rediscovered the crystal. And then the interesting thing is too, is based on the shape of the crystal and how this crystal is set up, whether it's in the matrix, like in a bed of crystals, like with a few crystals coming out, rather it is cut, rather it's natural, can all have different properties. Now, so what are the practical things that we would use crystals for? Because a lot of people say, "Oh man, that's some magic, that's some voodoo crystals, they don't really work." But we got to think about what we use them for today. So time, quartz crystal actually has a memory. So we use that quartz crystals to put in clocks to keep our clocks accurate. So it sounds funny that a crystal would have a memory, but just think about computer chips, right? They use silicon, which is quartz, and they have a memory. So that's why you're able to store information on your computer, because there are little bitty small crystals in there that kind of react, and interact with the way we think, right? So just to be able to move your mouse around, to save information, to do any of that processing, the information is actually stored in a crystal. So if we think about it, if we can kind of use that in both ways, not only for the technology that it's for, but also use the metaphysical properties, then that means that we can get the most out of our crystals. Even hard drives, they have crystals. That crystal is going to remember any information that is put into it, and it will not release that information until you do whatever it's programmed to do. So we can actually program quartz crystals to do what we need them to do, right? We can program them to have a memory. We can kind of program like bots to do stuff or to bring change to our life. Just like we can with information, we can use that metaphysical property to actually change, the world that we live in, which is basically a computer code anyway. So once you kind of learn about it, you see that this all sinks in together. Crystals. Would not be able to use cell phones if there weren't crystals in there because you have to remember the information, your contacts, all of this is stored on a crystal. And because of these perfectly built structures, we're able to tap into that. Now, I was talking about quartz. So this is the master crystal, is quartz. So this is a crystal that can be used to program all other crystals. So if you're just starting out, I would say definitely start with the quartz crystal. Now, if you look at this crystal, it actually has lines, sketches on it. So we would call that what's called a Lemurian quartz. So each one of these etches on the crystal stores information. So every time new information is put into the crystal, it etches it just like a computer. It marks it. And every single one of those lines will have some information in it. So what I was to say, if you're trying to get the information from a crystal, you definitely need to meditate with it and just run your fingers along the crack. See if you can stick your fingernails in the crack and just meditate with it and see how it makes you feel or see if you get anything from it. Every crystal is not for everybody. That's why there are different forms of crystals. There are different shapes of crystals and different colors of crystals. So you can have a blue crystal that might act a little differently than a red crystal. And remember that all these crystals line up with the chakra. So any crystal or chakra that you're trying to work with, always get that corresponding color crystal to work on that chakra. All right, these are what you call a tumble crystals, and there's a raw crystal. So depending on if it's tumbled or raw, might affect how it gives you the energy. This is ronaldite. This crystal will actually grow. I got a lot of these. This is real interesting. This is something that you can work with. I'll say start with the quartz, and you can kind of build your way up to other crystals. It's not really a rush. It's not something that you're going to be able to do immediately. But once you start using them, it'll kind of perpetuate itself. And then the crystals that are right for you, you'll be drawn to them. Whenever you're a place, you'll be like, I got to get that, or it just give you some kind of energy. That's how they really work. So, don't force it. Crystals aren't for everybody, but I at least think you at least should give it a try and just try to be more aware of what the different colors and the different shapes and how that works with the crystal. So we talked about quartz, right? So quartz is the master crystal, but it also has spin-offs. So this is rose quartz. Rose quartz really helps if you're going through anything with your heart, any kind of emotional traumas, anything that you're having, you can use that. This is another form of ronodite. And if we look, this crystal is actually on a matrix. It has a lot of different crystals, like a little city, and this is also on a matrix. So I like these crystals too because they seem to give off more energy to me. Once you start getting into crystals and choosing your crystals, you're going to have that crystal that resonates with you. And I would encourage you to start with that. After you get your course, eventually you'll be drawn to more. You might find one in your house. And a lot of times what'll happen, you'll lose a crystal. You'll be using it for a while, and you'll lose a crystal and you find it again. That's when you need to use it. All right. So how do we cleanse our crystals? Especially when you get a quartz crystal, you want to cleanse it. So you can cleanse it using the elements. Its first element is water. You can run it underwater, and that will cleanse the crystal of any information it had before and allow you to put your information into the crystal. So how do you put information to the crystal? You're just going to think about it. So if somebody else had the crystal or touch your crystal, what you want to do is you want to cleanse it because you only want your stuff to be in there, right? Because they remember everything. So you don't want to have any other people's bad stuff in there. So you can cleanse it using the elements. So we say you rinse it off with water, right? Earth. This is another element that we can use it for. You can bury it in the dirt for a couple of days. That will also cleanse the crystal, right? You can use wind. You can blow on the crystal. That's the most common way. Just your breath will blow on the crystal. That will go ahead and cleanse it for you. And you can use fire, I don't recommend doing it with any crystals. Once you get into it, you get a feel for what to do. But you could actually use fire, especially for the quartz, for the clear quartz, to kind of like clear your crystal and use the smudging, you know, and that smudging is where you're gonna burn. Either you're holding over the fire or you're gonna burn some kind of smoke, and that smoke is going to actually cleanse the crystal. And there's no right way to do it. You're just going to use your intuition. When you feel like it's enough, then it's enough. And like I said, don't force it. You don't have to. My mistake that I used to do is I used to do it over and over and over again, thinking like, is this going to work? If I put this Palo Santo on here one time, because I burn a lot of that, is that going to work? And just use your intuition. Don't force it. And you don't have to try that hard. Crystals are a real subtle energy. So you have to take your time to be able to feel it, have to take your time to be able to feel it. And it might not be something that hits you straight out, right? So how do you work with your crystals? So your crystal is cleansed. Now you want to work with your crystals. So what I was saying is you can program your crystals. You get that clear quartz, you meditate, and you meditate exactly on what you want the crystal to do and what you want it to remember. Meditate. You can hold the crystal up to your third eye. Any way that you do it, it's fine because this is an individual thing. Something that works for somebody else might not necessarily work for you. So my homeboy, I gave him a crystal because he kind of like resonated towards the crystal. He was like really into it, like really, what is this? So I gave him a crystal because I just wanted to see what he would do with it. Rather he was going to do maybe a crystal matrix where you put them all into a pattern and you connect them and they can work together. Or whether he was going to maybe sleep with it under his pillow, that's how you work with them. Sometimes you're on the way out the door and you might look at the crystal, your attention calls you to a certain crystal. Just pick it up, put it in your pocket. It's trying to talk to you. It's not going to actually call your name and whisper, hey, grab me before you go. But you're just going to notice it. And whatever thought comes in your head, then very next thought, just attribute that to the crystal. So anyway, I was just wondering. So I asked him what he did with it. He sent me a picture. He actually had the crystal hanging from his ceiling and he had a string on it and it was hanging like over his bed. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So however you feel like you need to use it, then use it. You don't have to tell anybody this can be your thing, but just try it out, see how it makes you feel. You can meditate with your crystals. That's a good way to kind of get you into a kind of Zen moment, by holding crystals in your hands, meditating it, you can look at it, you can think about it in your mind. And like I said, less is more. In the beginning, what I would do, I would speak to the crystals. I would say, talk out loud, like, hey, I want you to whatever, I would talk it, but you don't have to do that. Don't force it. You can just think it in your mind and it's automatically transferred to the crystal. It's just a thought thing. So once you realize that, then that's a good thing. We can use the crystals, work with them to balance our chakras. Now remember, each chakra has a color. So that means each chakra that you want to work with, you want to use the color of that crystal to correspond with that chakra. So let's just say your throat chakra, maybe you talk too much and you want to be more elegant in your speaking or whatever. If you're having communication blocks or communication problems, should use a blue chakra like lapis lazuli because your throat chakra is blue. And what I would do is you can meditate, like you saw the picture with the lady, you can meditate with the crystals on you. Or what you could do is you could actually, once you put them on, you could turn the crystals clockwise or counterclockwise until you get it right, until you feel that chakra is vibrating again. It's spinning in the right direction. And I definitely got a movie about chakras coming out where I'm going to explore all seven chakras one by one, talk about the properties. So that's coming up real soon. So she's holding the crystal up to her third eye. So that's what she feels like she does or what she needs to do. And that's how you should do it, approach it in kind of a magic way and just know that what you're doing is just for you. And I mean, have fun with it. Some other ways that you can work with your crystals. You can sleep with it under your pillow, before you go to bed, sleep with the crystal under your pillow. See if it affects your dreams at all. You can hold your crystal in your hands. You can squeeze it. Sometimes you'll notice when you hold the crystal in your hand and squeeze the crystal will get real hot. So you know it's doing something. All right, you can wear crystal jewelry with different gemstones, and just by wearing these gemstones, you'll automatically attract that energy and kind of merge with the energy with the crystal just by wearing it on your skin. So there's so many ways to work with it. I'm interested to know what you guys come up with. You can do crystals grids by putting them in a pattern and connecting even with your thought, correct, or another crystal by connecting all the crystals. They can form an energy grid, and depending on the pattern, it enhances the effect instead of having just one crystal. We can make um, crystal water, where you soak your cleansed crystal. You'll soak it in water for a couple of days, put it in the refrigerator, and now that water that you drink will be energized by the crystal. So there are so many ways to do it. You can scribe. You can just stare at the crystal, examine every part of the crystal, try to get lost into the crystal. That's a good way to calm down too. That's a good way to kind of get your thoughts together. Good way to meditate. Uh, just work with them. That's what you do.